I will recommend that everyone would get a blood test. Ideally, every 1 to 2 years as a general checkup, more if indicated, and your doctor would obviously help you with that. But even as a weekend warrior, you should still be checking in regularly for blood tests, because you're generally, as an athlete, going to be using more oxygen, so you're going to be at higher risk of having low iron levels, and particularly being a female athlete, they're obviously going to be losing iron through a menstrual cycle. So I will often get females to check sort of twice a year more if they've had an iron deficiency. And then males generally sort of once or once a year, maybe more if they've had a history of an iron deficiency as well. So yeah, absolutely important that they check on that. And depending on what part of the world you live in, I think getting vitamin D tested is important, particularly from a cyclist, because if calcium's low and vitamin D's low, obviously bone density is going to be at risk. So if you come off the bike, you're going to be much more likely to break a bone as well. So very important to still be getting regular blood tests in combination with all the health markers. So, cholesterol, for example, or kidney, liver function.
So you mentioned people should be getting the blood test like 1 to 2 times a year, but if you had a dramatic shift in like your training and just like dramatically increase that, should you be increasing the amount of blood tests you're doing to ensure you're getting the nutrients?
I guess it's dependent on the person, dependent on their history, if they've got any nutrient deficiencies and things like that. It will take a number of months for things to become deficient though. So you don't want to just, and working with your doctor obviously, because they're the ones that will be writing the request for you. But there's no point getting a blood test sort of monthly or anything like that unless indicated by your doctor. Maybe 3 monthly, but again, anything more regularly than that's probably not going to actually show up any changes that are happening anyway.
So it's a pretty slow process to become deficient in something.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly with things like vitamin B12 can sometimes take years to become deficient, even if you haven't been getting enough.
How does this information benefit you as a dietitian?
My goal with my clients is always to use food first. So, I don't like just supplementing for the sake of it, and I would never recommend that someone just takes a supplement without good reason for it. So iron, for example, often people just say, I'll just take an iron supplement for the sake of it. And that can actually be quite dangerous if you don't need to. So ideally, when I start working with someone, generally we want some baseline bloods. Dependent where they're living as well, we might be looking at vitamin D, but generally iron studies as a bit of a baseline, and some other things in there, again, dependent on the person. And then once we've got those results, we might need to increase the iron sources throughout the week. We might need to increase the vitamin D food sources and things like that. And if nothing sort of changes over a couple of months, so generally about that 3 to 6 month mark, we might look at supplements. If they're really, really low at that baseline, then we might jump straight to supplements, because it might take too long to get your iron levels increased with food alone, for example. And then there's certain levels where a infusion may be indicated as well. And again, that will come through a doctor or a sports physician. But very important that we're trying to use food first before just relying on supplements and infusions. It helps me sort of create somewhat of a meal plan or my advice around what foods they need to be including more often, because everyone's different. So some people aren't absorbing iron very well. For example, one of the signs of celiac disease is low iron. It's because the nutrients aren't being absorbed properly. So it is common for someone to have recurring low iron, and then they get tested for celiac disease. They haven't had any symptoms of celiac disease, but they've tested positive. So obviously the whole diet changes into a gluten-free diet. They start absorbing nutrition properly, and so on. So very important that we're looking at those sort of things so that I can provide specific advice and tailored advice to that person.